The old man stood outside the door, his heart racing. He had waited for this moment for what seemed like forever, but now that it was here, his nerves were overwhelming. His hands, once strong and steady from years of battle and farm work, now trembled slightly as he clutched the letter in his hand. The wrinkles on his face, carved deep by time and hard labor, seemed to speak of the long life he had lived. Yet, despite the years that had passed, he still felt the weight of the past heavy on his chest. He had always known that this moment would come, his marriage to a young woman from across the stars. He had heard of mail-order brides before, but never thought it would be his reality. She was young, beautiful, full of life, and he was far from that. He was old, his body battered by war, and the long years of tilling soil under a burning sun had taken its toll. A sharp breath escaped him as he stepped forward and knocked on the door. He tried to steady his nerves, but deep down, he couldn't shake the fear that she might look at him and see only an old, worn-out man. Would she find him too much to bear? Would she look past his age, his scars, his history, and see the man he had become? The door creaked open slowly, and there she stood. She was exactly as he had imagined, tall, with shining eyes and a soft smile that seemed to glow against the backdrop of the evening sun. The sight of her took his breath away, and for a moment, he forgot all about his age and the years that had passed. She studied him for a moment, and he could see the hesitation in her eyes. Was she unsure? Was she wondering if she had made the right choice? The silence between them felt heavy, and he felt the sting of uncertainty. He had come here to find love, but all he could see was her beauty and his own flaws. He cleared his throat, trying to find the right words. "I know I'm not what you expected," he began, his voice rough from years of use. "I've lived a hard life. War, farming, they've done this to me." He motioned to his face, his hands the signs of a life well lived but one that had not been kind. His voice cracked slightly as he spoke, but he didn't care. He had to say it. Her eyes softened, and she took a small step forward. The man's heart fluttered with hope, but he wasn't sure if it was enough. She raised her hand, and for a moment he thought she might touch him, but instead, she simply smiled. "I don't need you to be perfect," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "I don't need a man without scars. I need a man who has lived, who knows what it means to fight, to survive. I'm here because I see you." His heart swelled with relief. Could it be? Could she truly accept him for who he was? The suspense built between them, and for a moment, the world seemed to pause as they stood there, connected by words that spoke of understanding and the beginning of something unexpected. This was only the beginning, but for the first time in a long while, he felt something he hadn't in years: hope. He stood there, frozen for a moment, unsure if he had heard her correctly. His heart beat faster as the weight of her words sank in. "I see you." It was all she had said, but it was enough to make him feel like he had just taken the first step out of the darkness. For years he had lived with the belief that his past, his scars, his age, were things that would push people away. But here she was, standing in front of him, not judging him, not recoiling in fear or disappointment. A soft breeze rustled the leaves behind them, and he felt a surge of warmth fill his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. It was a strange sensation, almost foreign, but it was there, flickering quietly inside him. She took another step forward, closing the gap between them. The man noticed the way her eyes sparkled, the confidence in her posture, and the grace with which she moved. She was everything he had imagined, everything he could never be again. The gap between them, both in age and experience, seemed so vast. How could someone like him, so battle-worn and aged, ever match someone so young, so full of life? "Are you sure?" he asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. She shook her head gently, placing her finger on his lips to stop him. "I'm sure," she said softly. "You have lived a life that most people could never imagine. I see your strength, your resilience. That's all that matters to me." He didn't know what to say. His mouth felt dry and his throat tight, as though the weight of everything he had carried for years was suddenly beginning to lift. Could this really be happening? Was she truly telling him that she accepted him for who he was, flaws and all? She smiled again, and this time it wasn't just a smile, it was a promise. A promise that she wasn't going to walk away, that she wasn't going to judge him based on the years he had spent fighting wars and working the land. She saw the man he had become, not the one he once was. "Tell me," she said, breaking the silence. "What was it like? The war, the farming? You don't have to tell me everything, but I want to understand you. I want to know the man I'm standing with." The man's breath caught in his chest. No one had ever asked him that before. No one had ever cared to listen. But there was something in her voice, something in the way she looked at him, that made him want to share his story. For the first time in years, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry it all alone. He exhaled slowly, the weight of his past pressing against him. But this time, it wasn't suffocating. It was something he could talk about. And maybe, just maybe, she was the one person who could truly hear him. "I'll tell you," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "I'll tell you everything." As the days passed, the silence between them grew comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding that neither had expected. They settled into a routine, one that felt almost too natural, as if they had always been meant to be here together. The man found himself waking each morning with a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. The fields, once a reminder of his past struggles, now seemed like a place of peace, a place to build something new. He worked the land beside her, teaching her how to tend to the crops, and in return she shared her laughter, her curiosity, and the warmth of her presence. But there were moments, fleeting but powerful, when his age and past would catch up with him. He would catch a glimpse of his reflection in the water, the lines on his face deepening with time, and for a second, doubt would creep in. He would wonder if she truly saw him as he was, or if the weight of his history would one day break the fragile bond they had formed. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun dip below the horizon, the man found himself lost in thought. She had been speaking about her dreams, about the future, and he had been listening, but his mind kept wandering. He looked at her so full of life, and he felt the years between them like a chasm. Could he give her the life she deserved? Could he be the man she needed? Or was he already too broken? She noticed his change in demeanor. Her voice softened as she placed a hand on his, her fingers warm against his calloused skin. "What's on your mind?" she asked, her voice a comforting balm to his troubled thoughts. He hesitated. The words stuck in his throat. He wanted to tell her how he felt, how every day he wondered if he was enough for her, but he didn't want to burden her with his insecurities. He had come to love her, more deeply than he had ever thought possible, but there were still parts of him that remained hidden, parts that were too dark, too painful to share. "I'm just thinking," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "About us, about everything I've lived through, and how sometimes I wonder if you see me for who I really am." She didn't say anything at first, but her grip on his hand tightened. Then, with a calmness that both soothed and stirred something deep within him, she spoke. "I see you," she said, her eyes locking with his. "I don't see an old man or a warrior or a farmer. I see a man who has lived, who has survived, and who has fought. But I also see a man who can love, who can dream, and who is strong in ways that have nothing to do with his past. I see you, the man I chose. And I'm here by your side, for as long as you'll have me." The words hit him like a wave, sweeping away the last remnants of his doubt. In that moment, everything he had feared, everything he had carried with him, seemed to melt away. He was no longer a prisoner of his past. He was simply a man. Her man. And for the first time in his life, he truly believed that love, not time or age, was what defined him. The future, whatever it held, was something they would face together. And that thought gave him more strength than he had ever known. The days grew longer, and the bond between them deepened in ways neither of them could have predicted. Their lives, once dictated by routines of survival and solitude, had found a new rhythm, one that pulsed with shared moments, laughter, and a quiet understanding that spoke louder than any words ever could. The work in the fields no longer felt like a burden. It felt like an opportunity to build something, not just with the earth, but with each other. Every evening, as the sky darkened and the stars emerged, they would sit side by side, the hum of nature filling the space between them. Yet, despite the growing closeness, there was still a part of him that felt distant, as though some invisible wall kept him from fully opening up to her. He could see the way she looked at him, the way her smile softened when she spoke to him. But there were times when he wondered if she had truly grasped the weight of his past. Could she understand what it meant to carry the ghosts of war and years of loneliness? Could she ever love a man like him, truly and without reservation? One night, after a long day of work, they sat together beneath the vast, endless sky. The cool night air brushed against their skin, and the fire crackled beside them. She was talking about her childhood, her family, and the life she had left behind to come here. But he was lost in his own thoughts, his mind racing. "Tell me," she said, breaking through his reverie, "what was it like for you before I came here?" "Before we met?" His gaze shifted from the fire to her face. There was a certain vulnerability in her question, a soft curiosity that made his chest tighten. He had been waiting for this moment, the moment where he would have to confront his past head-on, but now that it was here, he felt an unfamiliar fear. Would she still see him the same way after hearing the truth? "It wasn't easy," he began slowly, his voice rough with the weight of the memories. "I was just a soldier, a farmer, trying to survive. War took everything from me. It stole my youth, my friends, my innocence. The fields, they were where I went to escape the noise of the world. But even there, I couldn't forget what I had done, what I had lost." Her eyes never left him as he spoke, and for the first time he didn't feel judged. He didn't feel like his words were too heavy for her to bear. It was as though she was carrying the weight with him, silently, just by listening. "I never thought I would find someone who would see me," he continued, his voice thickening. "Someone who would look beyond the scars, beyond the age, and see me for who I am now. But you do, and I don't know how to thank you for that." She leaned forward, her hand reaching for his. "You don't need to thank me," she whispered. "I'm here because I see you. All of you. The man you were and the man you are now. You've survived everything the world has thrown at you. And you're still standing. That's what matters." He felt a lump form in his throat, the raw emotion of her words washing over him like a tide. For so long, he had carried the burden of his past alone, convinced that no one could ever truly understand. But here, with her, he realized that maybe, just maybe, he didn't have to carry it anymore. Maybe he could start letting go, piece by piece, and let their love fill the spaces where the ghosts used to dwell. The stars above seemed brighter that night, as if the universe itself was offering them a silent promise. In that moment, the man knew that the past would never completely fade, but it no longer held the power to define him. It was love, not war, not farming, that would shape his future now. And with her by his side, he finally felt ready to face it. The night was quiet, too quiet. And for the first time in days, the man found himself restless. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, that the peace they had built together was fragile, like glass, and could shatter at any moment. It was an odd sensation, this gnawing unease, because everything between them had seemed to be falling into place. But beneath it all, there was a shadow, something unspoken, lurking just out of reach. He knew it had to do with his past, his haunted history that still whispered to him in the quiet moments. The woman noticed the change in him, of course. She had come to know the small signs, the way his shoulders would tense, his jaw would tighten when something troubled him. She had learned to read him in a way no one ever had, but this time she said nothing. She simply stayed by his side, waiting for him to open up when he was ready. He didn't know why, but something in her presence made him feel like he could trust her with even his darkest memories. They were sitting by the fire, as they often did, the flames casting dancing shadows across their faces. The man looked at her, his eyes searching hers for the right words. This was it. This was the moment he had dreaded. the one where he had to share the parts of his life that he had buried deep, where he would have to expose the rawest parts of himself. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice heavy with the weight of what was coming. "Something about my past. Something I've kept hidden for a long time." She turned toward him, her expression calm, yet filled with the warmth he had come to rely on. She didn't interrupt, just nodded as if to say she was ready, even though he knew no one could ever truly be ready for the truth he was about to reveal. "I was part of something terrible," he continued, the words harder to form than he had imagined. "Something that changed me. I fought in wars, yes, but it wasn't just the fighting. It was the things I had to do, the people I hurt, the lives I destroyed. I wasn't just a soldier. I was a man who lost his soul in the chaos." The fire crackled in the silence that followed his words. The air between them thickened with the weight of his confession. For a moment he felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the past was standing before him, waiting to judge him. But she didn't judge him. Instead, she reached out, placing a hand on his. It was a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes. It said that she was with him, that whatever he had done, whatever demons he was fighting, she wouldn't turn away. "I know that war changes people," she said quietly, her voice gentle but firm. "But it doesn't have to define you. You're not that man anymore." Her words pierced through the fog of guilt that had clouded his mind for so long. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that the man he had been wasn't who he was now, but the weight of his actions had never let him forget. How could he? How could he ever truly be free from the mistakes he had made? "I wish I could believe that," he whispered, his eyes lowering in shame. "But I don't know if I can ever escape it. The things I've done, the people I've lost." "I don't need you to escape it," she interrupted, her hand squeezing his. "I need you to move forward. With me." Her words were simple, yet they held so much power. In that moment, the man realized that perhaps he didn't need to escape his past. He just needed to let go of the weight of it, to allow himself to move forward with her, to live a life beyond the shadow of war and regret. Together, maybe they could build something stronger than his past, something that wasn't defined by loss, but by the possibility of a future that was still unwritten. The following days were a blur of quiet moments and simple routines. The man found himself lost in the peace of the life they were creating, and yet there was a quiet tension he couldn't ignore. It was as if the calm before a storm had settled over them, and though he couldn't pinpoint why, he knew something was coming, something that would change everything. One evening, as they sat in the small cabin they had made their home, a sharp knock on the door shattered the silence. The man's heart skipped a beat, his body instinctively tensing. It wasn't the sound of a visitor he was used to. It was the kind of knock that demanded attention, the kind that suggested danger. He stood up quickly, moving toward the door, but she was already there, standing between him and the unknown. Her eyes, normally calm and understanding, now held a glimmer of concern. She could sense it, too. Something wasn't right. When he opened the door, the face that greeted him was one he hadn't seen in years. A figure from his past, someone he thought was long gone. The man stiffened. His old comrade, a man he had fought alongside in the darkest of times, stood in front of him, looking as weathered as he was. The man's eyes narrowed. This wasn't a friendly visit. There was something urgent in his expression. "I've come for you," the man said, his voice low and urgent. "There's trouble. You need to come with me." The words hit him like a slap, the weight of them sinking deep into his chest. He knew what it meant. This wasn't a simple visit. It was a call to action. His past had come knocking, and there was no running from it. The scars he had tried to leave behind were now demanding his attention, and for the first time in weeks he felt the familiar pull of duty, of survival. But it wasn't just about him anymore. He glanced over at her, the woman who had come to mean everything to him. She was standing there, her face pale, her eyes filled with fear, but also something else. Determination. "You can't leave," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. "Not again. We've built something here. Don't let it be torn apart." Her words struck him harder than anything his comrade could have said. It was the first time she had spoken of what they had built, what they had fought for. This was no longer just his battle, it was theirs. And leaving now to chase the ghosts of his past would risk everything they had fought to create. The decision pressed down on him like the weight of the world. He knew he had a duty, but was it the right one? Could he abandon the life they had built together? Could he let his past tear them apart? The man stood there, caught between the past that had haunted him for so long and the future that was now within reach. The weight of his decision pressed on him like never before. He could feel the urgency in the air, the pull of the life he had lived. But more than that, he felt the steady presence of the woman beside him. She wasn't just the woman he had married. She was his anchor, his reminder that the battles of yesterday didn't have to define tomorrow. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. His comrade stood waiting, watching him with a knowing look, as though he understood the struggle within. But it was her, standing so quietly beside him, who held his gaze. She wasn't demanding anything, wasn't pushing him to make a choice. She was simply there, waiting for him to make the right one. The old soldier's mind raced. The call of duty was strong, undeniable. The past was a part of him, woven into every line of his face, every scar on his body. But now, in the presence of this woman, he realized that he had a chance for something else. Something he had never believed was possible, a future, a life without the constant shadows of war. He turned away from his comrade and faced her. The night seemed to hold its breath as he looked into her eyes, seeing the concern, but also the love, the trust that had blossomed between them. He knew what she wanted, what she feared. The man who stood in front of him, his comrade, represented everything he had tried to leave behind. But she, this woman, represented everything he wanted to protect. "I can't go back to that life," he finally said, his voice firm, though the weight of his words was heavy. "I've already lost too much. But here, with you, I still have something to fight for." Her eyes softened, and she reached out to take his hand. "We've fought for each other for this. You don't have to fight anymore. Not like that." A rush of emotion flooded through him. The years of war, the endless struggles, the feeling that he was nothing more than a broken man. All of it melted away in that moment. With her, he was whole. She had shown him that there was more to life than survival. There was love, there was peace, and there was hope for a future that didn't have to be defined by the battles of the past. He squeezed her hand, feeling the strength in her touch, the unspoken promise that whatever came next, they would face it together. The comrade standing at the door could wait. The past could stay in the shadows where it belonged. As the fire crackled behind them, the man knew that he had made his choice. The future was uncertain, but with her by his side, he was ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would build something new, something stronger than the ghosts of his past. And for the first time, he felt truly free.